Hello, everyone. In our revision lesson today, we'd be discussing a question from paper two. Now, this particular question, that is question number 7, is from the February-March 2025 paper. Having a look at this particular question, but before that, these questions, questions of this sort or nature, they are in questions like these, what the examiner does is the examiner is trying to test how well can you apply the knowledge that you've gained from research methods. It's not only about knowing what an experiment is, it's not only about knowing what an observation, what a correlation method, or what, for the matter of fact, different variables are, such as a situational variable that we deal with in this particular question. It's about you knowing them. That's step one. Step two is you knowing them well enough, you feeling confident enough to be able to apply your knowledge in a novel situation, in a new situation, in a hypothetical situation, in a made up situation. So, let's begin with the question without any further ado. So, the question over here says Jacinda is a factory manager. Jacinda, a factory manager, is planning a study about a worker's interpersonal distance preferences. Now, interpersonal distance preference, I'm sure, reminds you of the study conducted by Perry et al. That you've studied from the social approach. Now, read the information, the initial information that is provided to you, read it more than once. Please do that because the information, because you don't want to miss out on any important piece of information. Everything that is there is important. It wouldn't take it, it would just take a couple of seconds. Read it more than once because you know what? It's not only about these 2 marks over here. If you miss out on something that you shouldn't have missed out, you would eventually end up, God forbid, losing marks in the other parts of this question as well. So read it more than once. So what we've understood from here is there's this lady with the name Jacinda. She is a factory manager. She plans on conducting a research. What is the research about? Her research is about her workers' interpersonal distance preference, or the extent to which workers prefer distance with each other while they're at work. So to take this further, the A part of the question now. Jacinda arranges the distance between workstations. All right, we understand that. In one section of the factory, the distance between the workstations is large. So she has divided her factory's workspace into 2 sections. The first section has large distance between the workstations that are there. It's more like one workstation is over here and the other one would be on the other side, would be super far. And on the other hand, in another section, the distance between the workstations is small. So probably if you name them as section A and this one as section B with section written. Yeah. So as section B, so for the second section, that is section B that we're referring to over here, the workstation difference, the workstation distance is less. It's more like one workstation is over here, the other one would be here, third and fourth. So Jacinda arranges the distance between workstations. In one section of the factory, the distance between the workstations is large. And in another section, the distance between the workstations is small. Okay, we understand that part as well. Now, taking this ahead, suggest 2 situational variables that should be controlled so that they are the same for the 2 sections of the factory. We're talking about situational variables over here. What the examiner is trying to ask us is, because it is the interpersonal distance preference, it is the interpersonal distance preference that Jacinda is trying to measure, that she's trying to investigate. Minus that, everything else should be constant. And what are the situational variables that could possibly mess up that Jacinda should be controlling as she can? The first situational variable we're mentioning over here is the noise level. And the second variable that we're mentioning over here is workspace temperature, the temperature in that particular room or the workplace that she's conducting a research in. Now, this happens to be a 2-mark question, but how do we ensure that we're getting a 2 on 2 over here? The noise levels of both sections of the factory should have the same amount of background noise to avoid it affecting interpersonal distance. Fair enough. Additionally, the workspace temperature should be kept the same in both sections to ensure it doesn't influence comfort or interaction. So the two factors that have been identified, outlined, suggested over here are noise levels and workspace temperature. Now remember, the command word over here is suggest, and this sort of questions, they do not have a definitive answer. This is something that, let's just say, came in my mind. Anything that comes in your mind, and if it is appropriate and as it is in context of this particular novel situation that the examiner has put in front of us, it should work, right? Now, taking this ahead, moving on to the second part. The second part to question A over here, which is a 4-mark question. So remember, 2 marks already, 4 more marks now. For each of your suggestion in part A1, explain why each situational variable would be relevant to Jacinda's study. So the two situational variables that you've already mentioned, for us, we mentioned the first one being noise levels, and the second one was the temperature level in that particular room. You've been asked to explain, the command word over here is explain. Explain why each situational variable that you have suggested earlier is relevant to Jacinda's study. So the relevance over here matters. Now, let's start off with the first one. Controlling noise levels. Noise level was the first variable, right? So controlling noise levels is relevant because if one section of the factory is louder than the other, it could influence workers' stress or comfort level. Of course, if one section of the factory has a very very noisy environment, people might not feel very comfortable. The workers who there, they might not feel very comfortable. Not only are they not feeling very comfortable, them feeling uncomfortable might make them feel distress, which might consequently affect their interpersonal distance as well, interpersonal distance preference as well. So, affecting how close they want to be to others. Controlling noise ensures that differences in interpersonal distance are due to workstation spacing and not external distractions. So, workstation spacing is what this lady Jacinda was trying to conduct a research on. Now, taking this ahead, moving on to the second one. Additionally, different temperatures. Additionally, different temperatures in each section could affect how comfortable workers feel being near each other. For example, a hotter area might make people want more space. Keeping the temperature consistent ensures valid comparison across different conditions. So remember, this was a 4-mark question. You were asked to explain, and when you've been asked to explain, you might as well explain the way it should be explained in context of Jacinda's study. Do not miss out, because you don't want to miss out marks. You don't want to unnecessarily let go of marks. Moving on to the second part, that is part B. Suggest, again, a suggestion required. Suggest how Jacinda could obtain a volunteer sample. How is it that Jacinda could obtain a volunteer sample? A volunteer sample is also referred to as a self-selecting sample. So a volunteer sample is required. You need to, again, they're trying to test if the examiner is trying to test if you know what a volunteer sample is, and if you know it well enough to be able to apply it. Now, this is a 3-mark question, so we should have at least 3 relevant points that are meaningful and could help us gain marks. Jacinda could place posters or send emails around the factory inviting workers to take part in a study on workplace layout. She should include brief information about the study and provide contact details or a sign-up sheet. Interested employees can then voluntarily agree to participate for this study. So this is short, to the point, helps us get the marks we want. Now, moving on to part C over here, if you have a look at part C, this question again requires a suggestion. So a lot of suggestions have been demanded by the examiner in the paper from February-March 2025. Suggest how Jacinda could measure her participants' interpersonal distance preference other than using an interview. So interview is one way. How else do you think she can measure her participants' interpersonal distance? How else do you think she can measure her participants' interpersonal interpersonal distance preference, except an interview. Jacinda could use an observation method. Oh, this happens to be a 2 mark question. Don't miss out on that. Figure out the double check with the command word and then have a look at the amount of marks that the examiner has allocated to that particular question so that you know how much is actually required for you to be able to answer that question. So Jacinda could use an observation method such as, let me just remove this part. Jacinda could use an observation method such as recording how close participants naturally choose uh, to sit. This is a T. How participants naturally choose to sit or stand next to each other during breaks. So observation is you write the word, you mentioned the word observation, you get the first mark. For the second mark, you have provided this further explanation or further description. Now, the idea behind this quick little revision lesson was to remind you that not only do you need to know your research methods, you need to know them well enough so that you're able to apply them. One. Number two, if you calculate this, 2 marks from here, three more, 2 and 3 makes it 5. 5 and 4 makes it 9. 5 and 4 makes it 9. And two more. 9 and 2 makes it 11. So this question number 7, is of 11 marks. Question yourself. Do you think you could have afforded missing out any information from the information that has been provided to you by the examiner? No, you couldn't have. If you agree to what I'm saying, in that case, read your question again. You have enough of time, right? If they're asking you for one suggestion, write one suggestion. If they're asking you for 2 suggestions, do not exceed the number. Do not. So yeah, I hope this quick little revision lesson has been helpful, and thank you.